The information in this video is based on the most current information available at the time of production. While affordable safety training works hard to make sure these materials are current, the employer has sole responsibility for compliance with all laws, regulations, and standards. This video is sold with the understanding that AST is not providing professional or legal advice. Employers should have a reliable source for current regulatory information and best practices.
And tragic news out of Tampa, Florida today. A 17-year-old forklift operator was killed when his vehicle overturned. Police say that the operator was not properly trained, was carrying a passenger the vehicle was not designed for, and was below the legal age to drive a forklift, which is 18. Sergeant Cameron Norton of the Tampa Police Department says the employer will likely be cited for safety violations and may face criminal prosecution. He stresses that all forklift operators must be trained and evaluated by their employer.
Part 1. Forklift Basics. It is important to know the differences between forklifts and regular vehicles. Cars and trucks are designed mainly to transport people. Their center of gravity does not change much. Forklift stability, speed, braking distance, and power vary, depending on the size of the load, and the position of the forks. The maneuvering characteristics of forklifts are very different than automobiles. Vehicles steer with their front wheels, while forklifts steer with their rear wheels. This gives forklifts a tighter turning radius, but makes it harder to swerve to avoid obstacles. There are many different types of forklifts. They mostly fall into 7 different general classifications. Class 1 is the electric motor-driven rider trucks. Class 2 is the electric motor-driven narrow-aisle trucks. Class 3 is the electric motor-driven hand and combination hand and rider trucks. Class 4 is the internal combustion engine forklifts, with solid, or cushion tires. Class 5 forklifts have internal combustion engines with pneumatic tires. Electric and internal combustion tractors are Class 6 forklifts. Class 7 forklifts are rough terrain forklifts, which are frequently found on construction sites. You don't need to memorize each type, but you should know the classification of the vehicle that you will be operating. Some rules and regulations are broken down by classifications, so this information may be useful. The OSHA standard designates 11 types of forklifts. These classifications are used to determine which type of forklift is appropriate for specific hazard environments. They are classified by the source of power and safety features. Remember that forklifts with single-letter designators have the fewest safety features. Diesel-powered forklifts have 3 sub-designations. D-style forklifts come with minimal fire hazard safeguards. DS forklifts include exhaust, fuel, and electrical fire hazard safeguards. DY forklifts include all the safeguards from DS models, and have no electrical equipment. They also have temperature limitation features. E-type electric forklifts have minimal fire hazard safeguards. ES-type forklifts prevent hazardous sparks and limit surface temperatures. EE-type forklifts have all electric motor and electrical equipment enclosed. EX types are designed for atmospheres with flammable vapors or dusts. Gasoline forklifts have 2 sub-designations. G-type forklifts have minimal fire hazard safeguards. GS-type forklifts have exhaust, fuel, and electrical fire hazard safeguards. Liquid petroleum forklifts have two basic types. LP types have minimal fire hazard safeguards. LPS has exhaust, fuel, and electrical fire hazard safeguards. As you can see, there are many types of forklifts, each with their own function, power supply, and safety features. It is important to select the right type of forklift for your work environment. Workplaces with narrow aisles and access require a narrow aisle forklift. Areas with flammable gases, or fire hazards, may require an electric forklift, with additional safety features. Closed environments may be susceptible to carbon monoxide buildup, which may require an electric forklift that does not exhaust the harmful gas. One of the most important characteristics of a powered industrial truck is its capacity. That should be pretty easy, right? As long as the weight of the load is less than the rating listed on the capacity plate, we are in business. Unfortunately, it is not that simple. The capacity of a forklift changes constantly, depending on its speed, center of gravity, and lift height. An operator must constantly evaluate these conditions, to ensure that the vehicle is not overloaded. Let's take a look at some important principles of forklift operation. A forklift operates under the same principles as a children's teeter-totter. The weight of the load in the front must be balanced by the counterweight in the back, to keep the vehicle from tipping. Unlike a teeter-totter, the center of gravity of a loaded forklift is constantly changing, so the stability of the vehicle also changes. The center of gravity is the point at which all the weight is balanced. In an unloaded forklift, that is usually in the center of the vehicle. In a perfectly symmetrical load, its center of gravity is in the middle. Most loads are not evenly distributed, so the center of gravity will be somewhere other than the middle of the load. When you lift the load, the vehicle and the load create a combined center of gravity, which is closer to the front of the forklift. It is this combined center of gravity that must remain inside the stability triangle. Forklifts have a 3-point suspension system. The weight of the load is supported at 3 points, which are the two front wheels, and the center of the rear axle. If you join these points, you get the stability triangle. If the combined center of gravity of the vehicle, and the load, remains inside the triangle, the vehicle will remain stable. If the combined center of gravity goes outside of the triangle, the vehicle will tip over. There are many other factors that affect the combined center of gravity. Accelerating, braking, turning, tilting loads, lifting loads, and lowering loads, all move the combined center of gravity around the stability triangle. Let's take a look at a few examples of forklifts in operation, and watch how the center of gravity shifts while the driver performs normal material handling tasks. Every operator must know the lift capacity of the forklift they are operating. This can be found on the data plate. It contains the manufacturer's recommendations for lift capacity. The lift capacity depends on 3 factors: the weight of the load center, and the height of the mast. The weight of the load is just that. How heavy it is. Do not forget to include the weight of the pallets, or containers, when lifting. The load center is the distance from the load's center of gravity to its edge. The longer the distance, the lower the capacity. Many forklift manufacturers assume a distance of 24 inches. If your load is wider than that, the capacity will be lower than what is listed on the data plate. The height of the mast is the distance the load is lifted into the air. The higher it is lifted, the lower the capacity. Some forklifts will have different distances listed for lift capacities, and some will just have one maximum height. Make sure you are familiar with the information on the data plate, and remember, the lifting capacity may be lower, depending on the characteristics of the load you are moving. All of these parameters can be found in the Vehicle Operator's Manual, which must be kept on the forklift. Make sure you are familiar with the contents of this manual. If you follow its guidance, your powered industrial truck will remain within the stability triangle, and more importantly, you will be kept safe. Part 2. Inspections and Maintenance. A forklift can carry very heavy loads, so its components are frequently stressed. A small issue can cause big problems. Forklifts must be inspected each day, prior to operation. If your company works in shifts, the forklift must be inspected prior to use on each shift. The operator's manual will list the required inspection items. You should use a checklist, so that you don't miss important areas. The inspection consists of two parts. First, a pre-operation inspection must be made, to verify there are no broken, or damaged components. After this walk-around inspection is completed, the driver must perform operational checks, to verify that the vehicle is operating correctly. For the pre-operation inspection, start with checking the fluid levels. Make sure there is a proper amount of oil, water, and hydraulic fluid. Check for leaks, cracks, or other problems with cables, belts, and hydraulic hoses. Inspect the forks, backrest extension, and mast, for cracks, dents, or faulty welds. Make sure the retaining pins are in good condition. Examine the mast chain for defects and proper tension. Do not place your hands inside the mast. Use a stick or other device to check chain tension. Check the operator's compartment for dirt, grease, and debris. Make sure that the operator's manual is on the truck and it is legible. The safety decals and data plate must be present and readable. Don't forget to kick the tires, and make sure they are in good condition. Different types of forklifts will have their own unique inspection requirements. Electric, internal combustion, and liquid propane forklifts will all require checks on their fuel systems. Refer to the operator's manual for more detailed information. After the pre-operation inspection is complete, the driver should complete an operational inspection, with the engine running. This inspection should include checks of the accelerator, brakes, steering, drive control, tilt control, hoisting and lowering controls, horn, lights, safety devices, and any other items recommended by the owner's manual. Once these two inspections are completed, the forklift can be used for the day. If any problems are discovered, the vehicle must be removed from service, until it can be repaired. Maintenance and repairs will be done in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendation, and safety regulations. Only employer-authorized individuals, who have been trained on the required work, may perform repairs and maintenance. Unless you have an employee who has been specifically trained for these tasks, it's probably a good idea to have the work done by an outside professional.
And we've had an update on the cause of yesterday's fatality. The forklift operator lifted a pallet with 2 oil drums, but was unaware that one of the drums was empty. This made the load unstable and the vehicle tipped over when the operator tried to turn. Instead of staying seated and leaning away from the fall, he attempted to jump clear and was crushed by the overhead guard. Experts say you should always verify the stability of a load before lifting it, and always make turns slowly and carefully. A memorial service is being held on Friday.
Part 3. Forklift operations. Before we get started on operating the forklift, there are a few basic safety rules that every employee must know. Operators must be trained and authorized by the employer. Stunt driving and horseplay is not permitted. Operating a forklift in an unsafe manner is grounds for immediate termination of employment. Never stand or walk under an elevated load. Don't drive up to employees in front of fixed objects. They could get trapped between the object and the forklift and be crushed or killed. Slow down and sound the horn at aisle crossings and areas with obstructed views. Never operate a forklift on a surface that cannot support the weight of the vehicle. When entering and exiting a forklift, maintain 3 points of contact. Never jump in or out of the vehicle. Make sure that your shoes don't have any grease or debris that may cause you to slip. Always wear your seatbelt. This can protect you from falling out of the vehicle in case of a tip over. When starting the forklift, make sure that your path is clear. Sound the horn, or use a spotter, if the view is obstructed. Drive cautiously, and check for blind spots. Always drive at a speed that will allow you to stop in a safe manner. Keep your arms and legs inside the vehicle structure. Do not carry passengers on the forklift. Slow down for wet or slippery floors. Avoid driving over loose objects or damaged surfaces. Always look in the direction of travel, and maintain a clear view of the path ahead. Keep a distance of at least 3 truck lengths from the vehicle ahead. Slow down and sound the horn at aisle intersections, or other locations with obstructed views. Use the mirrors to check for pedestrians and traffic. Slopes must be ascended or descended slowly and carefully. If you are going up or down a slope, without carrying a load, the forks should face downhill. If you are carrying a load, the load should always face uphill. When turning, reduce the vehicle speed to a safe level, and turn the wheel in a smooth motion. Remember that the rear wheel steering will cause an exaggerated tail swing. If the vehicle tips over, hang on to the steering wheel and lean away from the fall. Never try and jump clear of a tipping vehicle, you could be crushed by the overhead guard. When traveling on public roads, always follow posted traffic rules and speed limits. Yield the right of way for emergency vehicles. Crossing railroad tracks on forklifts require special precautions. Obey the crossing signals, but do not rely on them to alert you of approaching trains. They often only provide a 20-second warning, which may not be enough time to clear the tracks. Stop and look both ways when approaching the tracks. Cross the railroad tracks at an angle, if possible. Never park within 8 feet of railroad tracks. There are many different types of attachments that are available for forklifts, such as backrest extensions, and multi-pallet forks. If forklift modifications are not factory installed, you must get permission in writing, from the manufacturer, before it can be used. The nameplate and operating instructions must be updated, to reflect the change in capacity, and the new operating characteristics of the modified forklift. When picking up a load, make sure it is within the capacity of the forklift. If you are not sure, you should weigh the load. Make sure that the load is balanced and secure. The shape of the load will affect its center of gravity. You may have to reorganize it, or secure it in some manner, to prevent it from shifting. If you are not sure of the load's stability, perform a test lift first. If the load seems unstable, put it down and rearrange it. If there is a possibility of the load shifting backwards, make sure that a backrest extension is installed. After you verify the load is stable and is within the vehicle capacity, lower the forks, and place them under the load. The forks should be as far apart as possible, to help stabilize the load. Drive forward slowly, until the load is resting against the backrest. Lift the load just enough to clear the ground. Use the tilt control to tip it back slightly for stability. Remember, as the height of the mast increases, the capacity of the forklift decreases. When lifting overhead loads, check for obstructions, such as lights or piping. Lift the load off the rack, and slowly back up the vehicle until the load is clear. Lower the load carefully. Do not move the vehicle until the load is all the way down. When traveling with a load, keep it as low as possible. It only needs to be raised enough to safely clear the ground. Keeping the load low will help the vehicle remain stable and balanced. If a load blocks your view, drive in reverse. If possible, split or rearrange the load to maximize visibility. If the view is obstructed, use a spotter to help guide you. Never raise or lower the load while moving. This can cause the center of gravity to shift unexpectedly. Travel at a safe, steady speed, and slow down for turns. Quick acceleration, braking, or turning may cause the forklift to tip over, or the load to fall off the forks. Be aware of the stability triangle, and stay focused on keeping the vehicle's center of gravity in the safe zone. Always travel with the load uphill. Never turn, or drive sideways on an incline. Be extra careful when approaching edges of elevated areas, such as loading docks. Always remember, when traveling with a load, keep it low, and keep it slow. When placing a load, make sure the surface is sturdy, flat, and can support the weight of the load. Always check that racks and shelves are secured to the wall and the floor. If you are stacking the load, make sure the bottom can support the additional weight. Never stack heavier loads onto lighter loads. Raise the load to the height required. Drive forward slowly. Lower the load carefully until it is resting on the shelf. Look behind you to make sure the path is clear, and then back out slowly. Once the forks are clear, stop the forklift, and lower the forks to a safe traveling height. As a forklift operator, you may have to load or unload trucks, trailers, or rail cars. Before driving into a trailer, walk in, and inspect the interior. Check the floor for cracks or damage. Forklifts are heavy, and they can crash right through a weak support structure. Check the overhead clearance. Make sure the opening is large enough for the load being transferred. Inspect the dock plates. Make sure that they are in good condition, and have been installed securely. The dock plate must be rated for the size of the load crossing it. A loose trailer or rail car can be dangerous. Make sure the trailer is mechanically secured to the loading dock. If that is not possible, use another means to block or lock the wheels. A sloped loading area is not sufficient, by itself, for securing the vehicle. If there is no trailer cab, use a jack placed at the front of the trailer. This will prevent the trailer from collapsing, or flipping, when the forklift enters the front of the trailer. Trailers are enclosed spaces, and can experience a buildup of harmful gases, such as carbon monoxide. Make sure there is sufficient ventilation. If you feel sick, or tired, you may be overexposed to a harmful gas. Exit the trailer immediately, and go to fresh air. Be sure to check the security of the trailer periodically. The stresses of loading, or unloading, can cause the vehicle to creep away from the loading docks. When working with trailers, a few minutes of inspection, and periodic double-checking, can prevent disaster. When parking a forklift, avoid blocking walkways, stairways, and fire exits. Lower the forks all the way to the ground, to eliminate a tripping hazard. Before you exit the forklift, put the controls in neutral, and set the parking brake. If you are going to be more than 25 feet away, or out of sight of the vehicle, turn off the vehicle. Before you walk away, do a quick double check, to make sure the parking location is safe, and the vehicle is secure. Forklifts will require frequent recharging, or refueling. While each forklift will have its own special procedures and requirements, here are some basic safety rules to keep in mind. Turn off the engine, and secure the vehicle, before charging or fueling. Recharging and refueling should only be done by trained and authorized employees. Never smoke in, or near, a refueling area or a charging station. A fire extinguisher should be kept close by. If possible, refueling should be done outdoors. Indoor refueling areas should have adequate ventilation. Never refuel a forklift near a heat source, or hazardous materials. Use the personal protective equipment that is required by the owner's manual. Be sure to wipe up any spilled fuel, before the forklift is started. While electric forklifts have zero emissions, and eliminate carbon monoxide exposure, vehicle batteries can be hazardous. Battery charging can produce flammable hydrogen gas, and battery acid can be very dangerous. Employees performing battery maintenance will require specialized training. Here are some additional safety rules for battery charging and maintenance. Post warning signs in the battery charging area. Keep open flames and electrical arcs a safe distance away. Use non-sparking tools. Make sure there is enough water for flushing and neutralizing battery electrolyte. An eye wash station must be nearby. Batteries are heavy. Material handling equipment must be available for moving battery cells. The battery charging equipment must be protected from accidental contact by forklifts. Keep the battery charging area clean and free of debris. A dirty charging area is a recipe for disaster. Remember, vehicle fueling and charging may only be done by trained and authorized employees. Refer to your operator's manual for specific instructions and safety precautions. Part 4. Forklift Operator Training Requirements. Forklift operators must be trained and evaluated by the employer. The employer will designate a person that has the knowledge, training, and experience to train operators and evaluate their competence. The designated trainer does not require any outside certification, but they must be appropriately experienced. The training must include formal instruction, practical training, and an evaluation. The formal instruction can be a lecture, a discussion, a video, written material, or other methods, as long as the required topics are covered. The practical instruction consists of demonstrations performed by the trainer, and practical exercises performed by the trainee. Once the formal instruction and practical training is completed, the operator must be evaluated by the trainer. Forklift trainees may only operate a forklift under the direct supervision of the trainer, and in an area that does not endanger the trainee or other employees. Before you start the practical training, set up a designated training area. Let the other employees know that forklift training is in progress, and ask them to stay clear. Start with familiarizing the employee with the controls of the forklift. Have the trainee operate the tilt, lift, shift, and other controls, until they can use them confidently. Set up a basic obstacle course, so the trainee can practice maneuvering the forklift. The rear wheel steering will take some getting used to, so let them practice for a while. Be sure to point out the large tail swing that happens when a forklift turns. Once they are comfortable maneuvering the forklift, give the trainee a practice load to lift. Start with a load that is small and easy to manipulate. Practice engaging, lifting, placing, and disengaging the load. Have the trainee lift the load, and practice driving while carrying the load. After the employee has had sufficient practice time on the training course, move them into the area where they will be operating. Under the supervision of the trainer, the employee should perform the material handling tasks that will be required as part of their job. When the trainer decides the employee is competent to operate on their own, they must complete a practical evaluation. Once they have proven they have the necessary skills, they can be certified, and permitted to operate on their own. The forklift is one of the most useful machines in the workplace, but it can also be dangerous. Treat it with the respect it deserves. You must know, and follow, the rules for operating forklifts safely. Only trained, and authorized, employees may drive forklifts. You must be familiar with the capacity, operating characteristics, and limitations of every forklift you operate. Wear a seatbelt, and know the appropriate actions in the event of a tip-over. Make sure the loads you lift are stable, and within the capacity of the vehicle. Always look in the direction that you are traveling, and use the horn to communicate with drivers and pedestrians. Travel with the load low to the ground. Remember that low, and slow, will help keep your forklift's center of gravity in the stability triangle. Thank you for your time, and drive safely.